today's episode I'm going to talk about some basic video editing techniques that you can apply to making a skate video part. Editing itself is a huge subject that I'm not going to try and cover today, but some of the tips and techniques I'm going to talk about can be applied specifically to making a skate video part. This is by no means the rules and regulations of how you make a skate video part. It's up to you how creative you want to go and what direction you want to take it, but hopefully some of these tips and techniques will be able to get you there faster. A lot of you using different editing software out there, I know, so I'm going to keep this to general editing procedures that can hopefully be applied to whatever software it is you're using. But today I'm actually using Final Cut Pro 7, so I'll throw in some Final Cut tips along the way, but for the most part it'll be just general editing procedures. If you weren't responsible for logging all this footage and you were just given all this media, you want to go through it and make sure that each file name is unique and also makes sense, is somewhat descriptive of the contents of the clip. This is a project that I was given. It's Willow's footage for his Transworld part, put out recently. Is on Transworld website, go along with his pro interview, and if the file name is just the original camera file name, which is some sort of number code, go ahead and make a unique file name out of it. So that way the computer can relink to it easily later and it won't get confused with another file. It's a good idea also to go through the footage with the skater whose video part it is, just because you want to get on the same page with them as far as footage priority. Sometimes you can actually organize all this footage in the folders before you bring it into the project. At this point I'm just going to keep it just as one general footage folder because it's really not that big of a project. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up Final Cut Pro. Okay, so I can start the project off by import folder, find my folder. Here it is, Willow Media, and that's the one we just looked at with titles, music and footage. Go ahead and choose that whole folder. And you can see that your organization has already paid off so far because you have your master folder with your subfolders neatly organized here in your browser. It's asking me to save the project, so I just opened it up, which is a good idea now that we've got some stuff going on in it. So let's save this thing and we'll call it Willow CWS in focus copy. So now you have your project with all your media in it. Final Cut has this handy little shortcut here where if you've dragged the first clip in, it'll ask you to match the media settings. I'll go ahead and say yes. We can drag the whole folder in now, and that's basically all the clips you've got to work with. If I didn't shoot the footage or if I didn't log it, I like to get to know the footage on the timeline, and I'll go through it, and as I'm watching through it I'll separate it onto different tracks according to the category of the footage, whether it's tricks, B-roll, portraits, that kind of thing. So you've gone through your footage on your timeline, you've got familiar with it, and you've organized it by category, you've set your in and out points. What I'll definitely do at this point, or I should probably have done earlier, is to label this timeline. I'm going to give it a name that makes sense to the project, so it's going to be called Willow Transworld in Focus Example A. A is going to be the start of a series, because what I like to do is I like to copy the timeline and work from the copy every time that I reach a certain level of progress. So right now we've gone through the footage once, I make a copy of it, edit from that, and once I've gone through it to a certain degree I'll make a copy of it again, and that way I have older copies to refer to. I know most editing programs have the ability to step backward and undo what you've done, but sometimes if you've gone through a huge round of one process, it's nice to have a whole copy of the timeline to go back to. That way you're not relying on Apple Z, edit, undo, that whole thing, Also, I know that the Final Cut and most editing software will save backup, auto-save copies of the project, but this way within the project you have timelines of sequences to sort of see your progress. It's just a personal thing, something you don't have to do, but I like to kind of work through the project like that. So now I've organized this sequence into basic categories. We've got all the tricks down here on this bottom track. We've got a bunch of shots right here that kind of work for intro type of things, portraits, funny moments, that kind of thing, intro shots. And then I also have a category up here on this other track, and that's all the stuff that was kind of credits, outro, that kind of stuff, So it's loosely organized, and also within the skate footage I've kind of generally organized it. You've got tricks that are pretty obviously going to be enders down at the back end here, and then some stuff that could be kind of like opening stuff, opening lines. They could maybe start the part at the beginning, but the middle part is generally pretty unorganized, just apart from tricks. Once you've organized the footage in your project and it's already in your timeline, the next step is to start planning out the edit. Sometimes you have music already picked out, which is great. Other times you need to make a rough cut of the footage just to get an idea of the flow, the vibe, the duration, and that'll help you pick out the music a little bit better. One little personal rule I have when I'm editing skate footage is if there's single tricks cut back to back, the edits are quite often close together, so I like to avoid having the action going across the frame in the same direction over and over. I like to mix it up, so let's say it goes from left to right, the next shot will probably be right to left or something a little different. It makes it a little bit more dynamic and easier on the eye. So if you look at this example of Willow right here, he finishes this little line going out the frame to the right, right to left, left to right. It just makes it a little bit easier on the eye, and also when you're following him out of the frame on one side, the next action's coming in ready where your eye is on the frame. So just stops all that tennis looking back and forth kind of thing that your eye can do. So that's it for part 1 of this episode. Be sure to click on the link at the end to get you to part 2, where we'll be talking about syncing the footage to music and also some finishing tips on how to smoothen out the edit before output. Synchronize the footage to the music is to add markers to the music track, that way there's